So Lori asked, I was adopted into a loving Jewish family. My adoption was private and I cannot find my biological father's name. Do you have any suggestions?
We're so excited to be here. Ooh, we have to mute all the guests. So do I have any suggestions? Well, if you don't have a name, it is a little harder. If you have any other names connected to your biological story, it's not impossible. I do have a contact of an organization that specifically works with the most limited amount of information, and they actually do help you connect to find your birth family. And later I can send it to Stephen, and maybe Stephen can send it to you, Lori. That organization actually helped one of my brothers, who also happened to have been adopted, find his birth family with just like a name. So it is hard, but it's not impossible. So there's a couple of routes. That's one of them. So yeah. So that video is one of a few, just to kind of recap why I chose that one. So my birth father, he did not have a lot of opportunity that I was granted in my life. He had a lot of space to generate and create experiences. And some of them were quite repetitious. And a lot of it was sort of like a repeat way of surviving to get what it was that he wanted to feel good. But he had all these talents, and I don't know that the environments that he was in knew how to foster them well enough to grant him the experience to transform into utilizing all of his skills and talents in productive ways. It just sort of wasn't a part of the foreground of what he was experiencing. So what worked out for us was when we discovered our connection and our similarities and our differences and our desire for partnership. And he just was so cool to want to be with me, that I used a lot of my skills that I discovered and developed over the course of my life, working with those experiencing homelessness, working with the men's correctional facility, the jail, creating a program for them in terms of rehabilitation and assimilating into society with tools, as well as working with high functioning autism, ADHD, learning curve students to help them creatively. So I called it creative solution solving, so they could achieve their outcome. And so a lot of those experiences for me, I in another chapter I have it called the belt of tools, and I just was able to pull them out and creatively toss them into the universe, and Don just sort of ate them up, and he was willing to work with that creativity. And so from the beginning of meeting him until really the whole 5 years, becoming his music partner, his advocate, I call it unique learning shadow, for the fact that, he might have been a bit institutionalized in the repetition of his life, but he was brilliant. So it just needed like a window to open so that he could be and experience things. From identifying what I thought he would identify as, I called it like a self-identified vagrant transformed into a self-esteemed volunteer. And together we started to perform and speak and share our story to other groups of people that were experiencing homelessness, or maybe struggling with addiction, or wanting to get some help in one area or another, or maybe we even went to the Jewish areas and we did music together there and talked and shared our story. And we were able to really connect with lots of different demographics, which was really inspiring. We also worked with foster youth and helped them write and record a song, put them in the studio, and Don was right there. And he was a kid himself. Like, that was one of the first volunteer ideas that I had, because I had been doing all this volunteer work all my life. And then I just kind of relived my life, bringing Don in through all of the chapters of my life. And he brought me through the chapters of his. So our whole reunion story over the course of 5 years, tied together with music and performing and speaking and sharing our stories, allowed us to weave through our entire lives separately together. And so we were literally sometimes 6 degrees of separation, really. Like, I could have been in downtown LA on one street corner volunteering a program for those experiencing homelessness, as Don was on the other selling drugs and getting busted for something and then getting rushed to the jail downtown. Or like he might have been sleeping in like an alley somewhere because it was easier for him just to go behind like a dumpster and sleep for a minute and then go continue on with what he was doing. So it was just so interesting to go through the history of his life and have him come through mine. And I actually thought about a lot of old friends or relationships that I'd had all through the years that were significant to me. And Dawn got to meet like all these different people, and we had all these different family fun field trip adventures intermittently so that we could do really cool things like horseback ride or parasail eventually, or hike, or go to these different, like, since he couldn't really leave the country because of his history of being in and out of jails and prisons for like drugs, even though it wasn't like hardcore criminal, it was repetition. So he had all these like felonies. He used to joke, if you ever saw my Olsen file, you'd never want to hang out with me because it's like sky high. But anyway, so because of that, we would go out and eat, and instead of being able to go see all these different countries like I used to do as a touring musician, I would go, okay, today we're going to go to, let's go to Armenia. We'd go to an Armenian restaurant. I would read the history of Armenia, play Armenian music on the way there. We would drink Armenian coffee and eat something and, you know, talk about what was going on there now. And then it would be like, we went there. And I was like, okay, we stamped that passport. Let's go somewhere else, you know. And the next day, you know, we might go to Turkey or that Turkish coffee. I know the coffee was a big thing for us because he was coming down off of his chosen drug at the beginning when I met him, which by that point was just street grade crystal meth. I was like, oh, if you want to keep doing that, go ahead, keep doing that. Or do you know anything about craft coffee? Because that's my thing. And he didn't. And he was all about showing me all these little ways of his survival in the streets where he didn't have electricity. So he would take batteries, wire them together, and power everything with like electricity through the batteries. So I got this idea. Well, if he likes crystal meth, and he uses batteries for this electricity bit, and these are all the little things that I was picking up on what interested him. I went to Home Depot. I got a car battery. I got a wagon. I got all my coffee paraphernalia, and I have good espresso. I've got like good stuff. I mean, I get it from Cuba, right? So it's like strong. And then I put in little baggies. I picked every drug country just to be funny. So like Cuba, Colombia, Mexico, and I got all the coffee beans and espresso beans, sometimes even with like more caffeine injected. And I put them in all these little baggies that looked like drugs. And then I brought like sugar in a bag, and then I brought powdered cream in a bag, and I put it all in this like backpack. And I put it all in, and then I put all my paraphernalia, like espresso maker, like the percolator from Turkey, all these different things, and a hot plate. And then I put it all in a wagon. I was taking the metro, which incidentally at the time I was living downtown LA, like literally 7 metro stops away from where my grandfather was sleeping outside. Like it was just crazy. And so I brought all this stuff this one day, and I was like, so you finished your crystal meth and you're coming down right now? Great. You're going to have 7 shots of espresso with me. And I opened up my bag and I pulled out all the paraphernalia, and I took the car battery and I powered everything with the car battery. So it was like a bigger version of what Don did in prison to get electricity and what he would do outside. And it was mirroring to him sort of the same concept, only we were using espresso, a high grade, really caffeinated espresso. And it was just like a creative idea that I had that really was one of like 80 that just worked. And it was such a fun memory of that day. So anyways, I want to share that, and I don't know why I just went on a tangent, but maybe we can bounce it back to you to the next question if I haven't answered it already.
Well, you mentioned memories, and earlier in our earlier sync up, you had mentioned wanting to hear from Heather about memories. I love what you did, because you took something that was, you took your father from one set of experiences to another that allowed him to let go of his past lives. But the past is still important to you because you get to see that transmission. But how did you want, or that transition?
Transformation. Oh yeah, I can ask Heather, but I want to comment on what you said. So that the reason I want to comment, because I can hear Don, like what he said to me. He said, like, I don't want our story to only just be that you found your father, like your dad, like stuck in a gutter somewhere, and you pulled him out and rose him up. He's like, I want to do something for you. I want to make sure I leave something, great for you. I want to make sure that you find the man of your dreams. Because one of the things that inspired me to go find Don was that I had a missing link. I had a missing piece that I didn't have. My bishara is the Hebrew term for like your soulmate, your other half that makes you better, that you can do life with and share life with, right? And it's a journey to find that compatible piece and who you want to experience these things with. That's not like an attachment or an entanglement, but it's like an evolutionary love connection where you can do life together and you can support each other growing in this life together and being of service to the world together, and to navigate the universe to find the person. It's not that they're a perfect person, but timing matters as well as compatibilities and communication and availability. So it's a whole journey. And what's funny is before I found Don, I was really struggling. And it's ironic that for all the judgment and the way that people treated him and judged him and just assumed this, that, and the other thing, like he was the most stable and consistent male role model that I was privileged to experience. And he taught me how to recognize love. And he gave me that opportunity to love him. I was allowed to love him. I was allowed to be myself, good, bad, the other, whatever. And even if I wasn't perfect, and he might be like, okay, you want to talk? You want to talk forever? Okay, do you just want to let off some steam? Go ahead and let off some steam. But it was his way of saying, you're talking too long, right? Or you're talking too much, but okay. And so he never, it wasn't like I was perfect. He just allowed me to be myself and loved me and let me love him. And that was something that I hadn't really had experienced in my life yet. And I think it's really special that like a birth father, because the father that raised me, that adopted me, he passed away of cancer before I ended up going to college. And it was really a misfortune for all of us because he was this amazing, loving, great nucleus of a person. So, take years before I was able to find Don. I didn't have really any role model. I was just sort of like going in and out of the universe of whoever was interested at the time, and why they were interested, I didn't even know. So, but fast forward to memories. One of the things that right away from finding Don and discovering him, and it's something I've always loved to do even before him, I love to document. I've always been the person who's taking the photos, and like 80 photos, and like making people stay in frozen, so, being the family historian or the documentarian of some sort. Not that I identify as a filmmaker, because I don't, but I just love it. And I also really love less material things, but more things that can create memories. Mm-hmm. So like that light talk, what do they call that light talk? Like just banter that you just have. How are you? How's your day? How's the weather? I like skip that. I'm always right into the jugular, like, so what's going on in the meat of your life right now? It's like always intense and serious, because I love the feelings and the memories and the moments, and really without that impact, I'll forget, so, and I'll take pictures. So when I found Don right away, I asked him permission. Can I take a picture? And then I just never stopped. And Pete, because I was always taking pictures and videos and recording him, there was documentary people that saw us in different incarnations. A student filmmaker saw us first, and he wanted to interview us and film us. And then I got to see how Don was. He was super charismatic on the camera. He wanted to share his story. He was proud of anything and everything. He wasn't ashamed that he chose homelessness and drugs. And he loved jail sometimes, because in his world, jail and prison was food, a bed, shelter, and peace, when the streets wasn't. So it's just a totally different perspective. So then now we're going to fast forward to Heather, right? She's here. Are you here? So we're going to talk a little bit about, did I say her name right?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about Roots Tech and really what this platform is, and the organization itself, and connected to the concept of memories, and why you brought me here in the first place to take over and talk too much. Just kidding. So go ahead and share. Yeah.
Oh, I was just, when we were talking previously, the thing that struck me in terms of similarity between your story and kind of the overall purpose of Roots Tech, and we have themes every year. One year it was Choose Connection. This year it's Uniting. But you think of your story and how you had that moment where, and it was more than a moment, where you were creating an inspiring experience with you and your biological father, in terms of coming to know each other, coming to benefit each other, and really lift each other. That's such an incredible experience, and sometimes we tend to go and think that family history is kind of a thing of the past. It's always about records, and that's really important. I love records, and I think a lot of people at the conference love records and love making those discoveries. But it's so special when you see this connection and this uniting happening in the present and benefiting people. And it's not just you that will benefit from this relationship that you built. Your biological father benefited from it. Future generations will benefit from it.